Okay, welcome to the Finance Committee meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. Bob is not going to be here this evening, I think, so I'll take the minutes. A couple things we want to do. We want to have a little discussion, review of the meeting from a couple nights ago, and a little discussion about school budget. And then for the regular budget, the rest of the regular budget, there's a piece of it which I think we would take a vote on tonight. You know, every year Bob excuses himself from discussion around one of the issues because it's effectively best to leave the room and not participate in the conversation, and not even influence it by sitting here. So I think we can do those if he's not here, and it's just a few of the budget items. We met last night, Scott and Bob and myself. I noted that I was pleased with the meeting on Tuesday night. I was quite happy that with the outcome of that, the idea of that there seems to be the beginning of a real commitment to take a look at what the situation is with the schooling, and that's a fine outcome. So I don't know how you feel about that, but that was certainly my impression of the meeting.
No, I mean, I think that long-term conversation, if it actually happens, will be the first positive sign.
We actually have that June 14th meeting.
Well, it's more than just having the meeting, but actually having a discussion
at the meeting,
that actually starts.
But start with having the meeting and then go from there, and I agree. We need to obviously get through this next budget cycle and get through town meeting, but the willingness of all three committees to sit down on June 14th, have that realistic discussion and see where it goes, and it might be helpful to reach out to the select board and suggest that they prepare an agenda for that meeting ahead of time, so it just doesn't meander. That would probably be a good way to go.
Yeah. I mean, we've been talking to ourselves for quite a few years about stuff. We have to get the people involved who actually are the decision makers on these things.
I mean, how long have we wanted to have this discussion?
Well, you're not going to do it all.
I've been in on 10 years, and this is the first time that there's being a discussion.
But even starting it.
But I think what would be helpful if the select board would put together an agenda. I think it would also be helpful if at some point the town may want to bring in an outside facilitator for this kind of meeting in terms of the strategic planning, that type of stuff, and then go from there. So see what we can develop.
Yeah, I don't know if the outside facility. I mean, I think if we could all just get on the same page about here's the income of the town, here's the list of all the expenditures of the town, and we got to figure out how to make those two numbers match.
Yeah. That, and then how do we grow the pie?
Well, that's a separate discussion. Beyond that, that's another important part of it. And I think too the other part of this that hits me is this school was on the statement of +305 for so many years. That was it. They're clearly no longer happy with that as a default.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we need a new default for the schools, whatever that is. If it's schools +3 or something else, but you know, they need to wrap their mind around this is how much money they have, and then build the budget accordingly. And where we're at now is they don't think of it as they've got a budget they've got to build within this revenue stream. They just build it out and then get upset that people don't want to give it to them. And that's just not, it's just tiresome. I mean, I'll be honest. And that was the downside of the meeting on Monday was it feels like that same discussion of if the money's not there this year, what happens? And you know, you just get this, well, we have to have the money. And you're like, okay, but what if it's not there? You know, if the town votes down money for them.
Town very well may.
And they may, right? I mean, and so if the town votes it down, then what? And just the unwillingness to even entertain that as a discussion item is frustrating.
Do we know where the 200,000 is actually coming from?
The way it was put together, my understanding is that after that meeting that they had near the end of April, the select board asked Chris if he could take the current budget, and which was a balanced budget, and see if there was a way to find a couple $100,000. And so that's what he did. He changed a few things around, and it was, but there was basically a closer look at some of the income items or some of the expenditures, anti-income items, for example. There was a much larger amount in recently for abatements, then, and it didn't materialize. So what he did in this year's budget was cut way back on the abatements, and that was a big chunk of the money right there. So it's basically in the budget as part of the general revenue. Now that's the 305 and the 200.
Right.
Yeah.
It's nothing more than.
It's not enough. Yeah, my sense of the 200 is it's just sort of to monkey around with things, and if we're lucky, we would have had the money and then you spend it, and so instead of having it the next year, we're going to be borrowing against next
year. I think that's exactly right.
If we didn't end up needing it, if we end up needing it, then we're going to have a shortfall in whatever budget it is, and so I mean, you can make some guesses.
I think you're right. I think we have borrowing against next year.
Yeah, we're just borrowing against next year, and maybe it'll work out, and and at 200,000. Well, we could probably weather that one way or the other, and so that's part of, again, I think the rhetoric problem of this. Just because you can do this doesn't mean this is the right way to start building budgets is, every year going around monkeying around with abatement charges and things like that to try to give the schools the extra 200,000. The other way I would frame it is, if we had started with this discussion early on, the real trade-off for me is, the school needs the extra 500,000, and then we have the fire truck and the new dump trucks and things like that, and that might be the way I think it makes more sense to frame this of maybe instead of buying the fire truck, we pump the money into this year's school budget, we sort of hope the homes don't catch on fire that we need fire trucks for, and it doesn't seem like a good trade-off to me, but that's really the trade-offs I think this town is facing.
Or we look at basically financing the fire truck.
Exactly, or something, but we're not having those discussions because the school comes in late and just says we need this much money.
Yeah.
And then when nobody wants to talk about, well, if we give it to the schools, we're not spending it on these things, and so there's the real trade-offs in the town. At which point it's an easier conversation to have, but it makes it look like, well, we got a fixed amount of money and we're pitting departments against each other because, well, we have a fixed amount of money and the departments and one person spends more and the other spend less. That's just true. But
we should be safe with the couple 100,000 because looking back, and it was on January 1st, 2015, not that long ago. Free cash is certified for the year is $292,000.
Right. Yeah.
So everybody forgets about those years of free cash, and everybody remembers the $1 million.
The other thing that is sort of it's amazing me how much about the West Street renovation project, which we know we're going to have all that. It's part of the building the school is we've got to do something with that whole thing, and the numbers on that are potentially quite large. And that's another one that I'm not sure how that's dropped out of the conversation of stabilization fund. I mean, if we need to spend $1 million on that project, that $1 million has to come from somewhere, and it's going to come right out of the stabilization fund.
I'm going to try to talk with Chris again tomorrow about some things, but I had a conversation fairly recently because we remember that it was just a few weeks ago that the committee that's looking at that came in and asked us for an extra, was $5,000 I think that they needed for the initial work. And I think they were trying to get the consultant in and get a lot of work done this spring to be able to make
find out what the cost was,
Yeah, and they did not do that in time for the May special town meeting, but there's still a chance that they could get it on and they could redo a warrant article because we're 4 or 5 weeks out from the June special town meeting. So they may still be bringing something to the town on that. I hope they do.
Because the big question there is going to be, is this going to be just a tear down and turn into fields, tear down and sell, or is it going to be a retrofit for all the town office space? The last one's going to be the most expensive, obviously. But if that's where we're heading, having even rough estimates on what that number is seems to be huge as part of this whole budget cycle right now. Particularly with all this discussion about why do we have so much in stabilization fund. Well, we're going to have a lot less if we end up spending $1.5 million on that.
That's where we get into where I hope the June 14th meeting ultimately goes is real planning for the town.
It's not just about the school.
Exactly, right. It's about all of these things.
All these things, all moving parts, a
right.
real planning session, a real future looking forward, type of thing. So we'll see.
I'd like to get any thoughts you have about school budget for next year. Obviously, we have to have at least the minimum, In past years, we've all agreed on recommending continuing the override amount of $305,000. The real issue this year, I think, is the extra 200,000, and the question is an extra $497,000. So that includes 200. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's minimum.
Plus
305 plus 200 plus
Yeah.
279. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, it is what it is. We'll see if the town votes for it. We may want to give some thought, though, of if the minimum plus 305 just is not a viable formula anymore, what should that formula be?
But maybe the June 14th meeting where we're starting to look at, the big picture.
The big picture, we can reach that
Say,
decision. Yeah.
we can do this, and that leaves
Yeah.
That, right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the real issue for the school committee is, I think, the whole uncertainty of it. And that's where their big anxiety comes from. If we can reach, okay, 305 isn't working anymore, here's what does work, this is what we budget around, here's how we work, great, but you gotta live with it. So,
That's what's weird though, they don't have to live with it, right, because it can always ask the town for money, right? And that's the other weird thing to me, is the school committee seems to have lost all confidence that they can persuade the town to vote money for it. So they basically, if they can put it in a budget and nobody will notice the amount.
well, but don't forget,
Yeah,
traditionally, we always, the school committee didn't come to us with a budget.
Right.
It's only until recently, when they weren't able to live with
Yeah,
the minimum
exactly,
plus
right.
305, that
Right.
we didn't intervene, but said, hey, we have to see this. And if we go back to that formulary with, say, a new number, let's say, you gotta live with it,
Yeah.
we can go back to not having to review it,
Right.
so.
No, I would love to have that kind of a thing, we can do it, but then that's the point, they don't have to live with it, is, so we almost need them to agree.
Yeah.
Because they can always still go to the town and ask for transferring from stabilization fund over to the school
Yeah.
budget, right, they can do that. But, that last town meeting, even the item that's mandated by the state, that the finance committee recommended people vote for, it got voted
Yeah,
down,
and we voted for it.
Yeah, exactly,
Always.
and that's pretty bad for the school committee, I think, in their PR purposes of, if they can't persuade people to vote for things that are mandated by the state, they've got a big PR problem, and it's not us,
Mhm.
it's,
It's kind of a weird dynamic
Yes.
before that, though.
yeah. It
The
was,
way people were like asking questions.
right,
It just seemed to take a weird twist.
yeah,
And we do have to remember that we're also another 400,000 above net school minimum, because the retired teachers'
Yes.
health insurance is included in everybody else.
right.
Is it possibly-
It's not included in the
Well, that's another
figures,
thing
but
that we
it
should change in the June
be.
14th, in other words,
Yeah, right.
and there's no reason for us to be the only town that separates that out and pretends that's not part of the school
Yeah.
spending, so, and that could be you put it in and then we're agreeing on a bigger number than what we were spending, so it's not just they have to find $400,000, but just standardizing
Yeah.
this, so we don't have to go through these debates every year,
Mhm.
and people acknowledge there's trade-offs, right? If we wanna spend more on schooling in this town, we have to spend less on something else in this town, or as you know, we have to get more revenue in this town.
Mhm. Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's it.
Because of the prospect of actually starting conversations in late June, I became much more comfortable over the last couple of days of thinking of the $200,000 as being sort of a bridge, not part of a new formula, but sort of a bridge. And I have always been worried, and I think everybody has been worried about large sums of money being taken from stabilization fund for operations. We basically did that years ago with the landfill, and it almost ran us into the ground. The prospect is there of that happening. So to avoid that, through the conversations about an agreed upon look at what should be happening with the schools, is a big step, and it's going to take some funds to do this, some initial funds. And so I've become very comfortable with the idea of the $200,000 as being a bridge towards that. The other 279, though, no, I'm not in favor of that. So I don't know how you feel about the other 279. We have to make a recommendation.
Yeah. I think that's one where we all vote individually.
But the committee still has to
Yeah,
make a
recommendation.
recommendation.
Let's make a recommendation, so we should have some conversation about the
Right.
279.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with 200. I mean, this is one of those, like, I get it's all funny money accounting, but if the select board wants to pretend there's just this money that they found and we can just build it into the budget, you know, I agree, you know, sort of, in some ways it's like a good faith effort. You're saying, okay, I'm gonna argue about that part of it. The other part of it, I think, is a more interesting question. I like the idea of it being a separate warrant article, so it's not like bearing the entire extra cost and hoping nobody in town notices. You know, the town will have to vote on that, you know, as a transfer stabilization fund. So I like the idea of separating it out. I've got a mixed mind about it. You know, on one level, I'm not real happy with the rhetoric around the school of this is our bare bones budget, and it's not really bare bones. On the other hand, it's like this, it seems to me that these future discussions is what I really care about. And if I was convinced that if we voted to transfer $300,000 out of stabilization fund and everybody came to a meeting in June in good faith and we really figured this out, that'd be the best $300,000 we could ever spend.
Yeah.
If the transferring the $300,000 though just gets interpreted as, well, there's our new baseline for the schools, and then, you know, anything less than that is non-negotiable, and it just sort of comes out, then it's a whole different thing. And I don't know, honestly, which way it ends up tilting. What is the more important discussion? The $300,000 is nothing compared to this long-term discussion. So,
I think the long-term discussion is the most important thing.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, we need to address this before the long-term discussion.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't, I mean, how many years have they come back and asked us for more, just this year, just this year, just this year? I mean,
yeah.
how many years has that been? 5, 6?
6, yeah. Right.
Yep.
So, I don't know, I don't sit on the school committee, I don't know the details of whether it really is a problem or not. How they would resolve it, I don't know. School's pretty important to the town.
Well, one reason why this general discussion is important is that we know that the schools have started every year from the position that they want to provide what they call level service. That's not a good concept for a business. And as a matter of fact, some of the town departments had tried that in the past, and it's been roundly rejected by the town administrator and the select board for the town departments. The budget does not start with level service. That is not an idea, which makes it wrong. So that is tied up very intimately in this whole issue, that if you if that's your mindset, it's very, very difficult to come to a conclusion that you can actually operate under $4,911 average property tax per house in town, and so it's one of the issues, I think, which has to be addressed.
Well, let me ask this, if we support the 279 and it passes, how deep a hole is that for us for operations for next year?
The 279 would have to come out of stabilization funds.
Yeah. So we just hope there's no emergency?
Well, it'll be just 300,000. I mean, we'll still have 3 million, but it'll be minus whatever that West Street thing costs.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's where if the West Street thing comes in at $1 million, you know, now we're not at 2.3, we're at 2.3, and you know, if it comes in $1.5 million, we're under 2. You know, and so that's just a big booming unknown expense. So how much, if the West Street thing was suddenly going to be free, it looks a lot different to me
Yeah.
than if it comes in at $1.5 million and we're trying to renovate for town offices. And so until that decision is made, it's really hard to answer.
Yeah, I mean, with the forward commitments, in the sense that commitments for paying back past loans, we're down to $3.1 million
Right.
in the stabilization funds.
Yeah.
So, and it is going to take some money to do whatever it is has to be done with the old West Street
Mhm.
School property.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. The other thing too about the level service budget that was interesting to me is they started with the level service budget and they added in several different items or so on, and that's the classic ratcheting thing, right? You know, your level service plus this stuff, and then next year your level service plus this stuff, and that's part of the reason, you know, when we saw that with the discussion about the teacher, right? Since it's level services and they don't need 3 6th grade teachers, well, now they can have 3 2nd grade teachers, you know, it's because it's level service then, but it's just rearranging the budget items to maintain the level, and then everything else comes on top of that, rather than starting with what are we really trying to do here. And so you can see why government bureaucracies, the level service thing is just not the right way to do it, you know, because it always leads to more over time. You can't cut anything if you're starting with this rhetoric of, well, we don't want to cut any services, and so thus add-ons have to be add-ons.
Well, the problem is that we can't go into a town meeting and say, we don't know, well, we can't make a recommendation, vote your conscience, you know, that type of thing.
But we will know more by the June meeting when this will come up about the West Street cost.
So we don't
I
need
hope
to
so.
know, we don't
Yes.
need to know so
So
much.
that would be my recommendation, is like, yeah, we say that we're fine with the 200, that would be my advice.
Right,
We're fine
yeah,
with the 200, the other, we won't know until we get some
Will there
firmer
be, will
numbers
there be
on
discussion about this on Monday?
No.
All right, then we have time.
that. Yeah.
All right, yeah.
Right, and then, because, you know,
Yeah,
that
and
to
then-
me strikes me as it's just a potentially very large expense.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. We wait until we get more information, make that
But,
decision before.
but we do have to, we have to make a decision about what his published budget is.
Right, and the published budget includes the 200.
And I think, well, that's why,
Right.
as I hear the conversation tonight, as I heard it last night, I think that there's basically an agreement, I won't take a
Yeah.
formal vote, but I think basically
Yeah.
agreement that in the budget that gets printed up in the booklet, the 200,000 would be
Right,
included.
Yeah.
right, and then the other two,
Yeah.
whatever has to go as a
So,
warrant
yeah.
article coming out of stabilization fund, and we will reserve voting on that or deciding until we find out what this other potentially very large and potentially very immediate capital expense is.
Yeah,
So,
I think that's the way to go.
And I think, if you remember last year, there was a motion to amend the budget and to take the money out of stabilization fund. And Ed Ryan recommended to the town that we separate it out into 2 articles. Is if you make that one article and it loses because people don't want to vote the extra
Right.
money, so the whole budget is gone.
Exactly, right.
And,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, so you just leave it as a completely
so
separate warrant
it's got to be,
article.
it's got to be something completely separate, and it could be done as a, prefer to see it done as a separate amendment.
Right, I agree.
But we voted at
Yep.
that time, yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
So we get more information before we then have that discussion and we can
Yeah.
make a recommendation about the 279.
right. Yeah, and then the presentation on the budget is, here's the budget we can live with, right, because we think affords it, and then the school has to get up and say why they need another 2, whatever that ends up being they want, and then they can make that case, and if they're persuasive, they'll get it.
Yeah.
And,
When's the roof thing get voted?
Monday.
All right, so good.
So it's another piece of information that might be useful.
yes.
Yeah, and we'll know by that time.
That was the other really disturbing thing Monday, was the argument against, I mean, that's just disturbing to me, that
Yeah.
like, it's just, how is the school committee not wildly enthusiastic about paying cash for this roof? I can't.
It's been a request for at least 3 years.
I just don't understand how that ever even,
Well, their theory is we need the cash. We have a much better chance not spending $1.4 million to get the cash.
but we're
Instead-
spending $1.4 million.
instead- No.
We're just borrowing,
But
that's the
we-
point.
But we will basically spend it over time, you know.
Exactly, and that's the part that I don't get, is like,
Yeah,
well, we're
so-
not really spending it because we're borrowing it.
Yeah, I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah, that's a complete mystification. And
Yes.
We don't want to spend 1.4, we want to borrow and spend 1.6.
Yeah, yeah.
What?
Well, it'll be more than that. It'll be more than 1.6 when you look at it, but.
If it's very short-term borrowing, it'd be
Yeah.
1.6 probably, but if it's 10-year borrowing, it's going to be
Yeah.
closer to 2.
Yeah. Yeah, I just keep me away.
Well, then, I think maybe that would ask if there's a motion that for the school budget item, that we recommend that the minimum plus the 305 plus the 200,000.
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second? Any further discussion on that? If not, then all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. The other item I'd like to do tonight is there's these handful of budget items, sort of stuff at the very end of the budget. And I picked out the budget items for, I don't have copies, I just got this out. If you have your budgets with you there, you can take a look at it. It's from, if you don't have your budget with you, this page at least has the budget. It's from number 820 on down. And they're all listed there as to what the items are. The 820 is the stated 820. Department numbers, yeah.
That was a good one. Go ahead.
820 is the state assessments and charges, and that is $1,026,905 for next year. 840 is the intergovernmental assessments. That includes Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, South Hadley Granby Veterans District, Hampshire Sheriff's Regional Lockup, Council of Governments, and Pathfinder. Some stuff in there. Although Pathfinder is now moved out from here. Not actually included in the budget. It had been included in this budget in the past. It's actually a separate budget item. But that the total amount here is $9,253. Pathfinder had been a big amount there before. The casualty liability insurance is $901. Total for next year is $218,500. The county retirement is budget item number 911, and that's $997,795. Workers' compensation is budget item 912. That's $146,688. Unemployment compensation is item number 913. Budget is $51,909. Health insurance is budget number 914, and that's $1,525,978. Life insurance budget item number 915, $1,540. And the last one is the reserve fund item, budget item number 920, and that is $130,000. This one, remember, is listed in everything we've done over the years as 920. It turns out that's not actually its number, but nevertheless, it's the reserve fund. And I felt comfortable reading because we've had thorough discussions about all in the past. I would be prepared to take a motion to approve these en masse.
So moved.
We have a second? Any discussion about any of them? If not, then all in favor?
Aye.
Good. And be happy to have Bob back taking notes next.
Exactly.
Thank you very much. The other item we've got to do, we have to look at the rest of the budgets. And we got to prepare our document. We had some conversation last night of doing the usual nuts and bolts things at the beginning. And for the narrative, talk a little bit about the schools. Make it as a kind of an upbeat sort of thing, reflecting commitment to have discussion, but explain what some of the issues are liable to be, and use that
As opposed to just having a long-term plan for the school, have a long-term plan for the town.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful discussion, framing that, in some ways, it's setting a framework for the discussions of, we're looking forward to framing these discussions, thinking about the town and all these budgets instead of doing these open together.
Lady here from the Finance Committee meeting? Sure.
Thank you very much. You're very welcome.
Okay, so if that's an agreement, then I don't know if we need to meet tomorrow night. I would say, because I don't have anything written up
Yeah.
yet. I'll send an email around. I've got meetings scheduled for next Tuesday and Wednesday.
Okay.
Monday's town meeting. I think 4 of us are going to be able to be there. And I've just got meetings scheduled for Tuesday and Wednesday. I would hope to have a start on stuff. So I'll send an email around and get your availability.
Meeting starts at 6.
Can we do,
Start at 7.
Wednesday, Thursday instead of Tuesday, Wednesday?
I can't do Thursday.
I can't
I'm-
do
Okay.
Thursday.
I can't
I'm
do
sure.
Thursday.
I might not be able to do Tuesday, so.
7 o'clock better on.
The town meeting is at 7, all right?
Right, Monday.
Yeah, I think we have a meeting scheduled for 6:30 there in case there's last minute stuff to talk about. But on Tuesday or Wednesday, or
Tuesday or Wednesday.
6:30 is okay?
Yeah, I'll try for
Okay.
Tuesday, but not
Okay,
likely.
I'll send something around.
Unless we can finally do Skype meetings.
Yeah, we have to pass it. We can have discussions that way, but we can't have
Yeah.
one-on-one.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.